and we left off on example 4. So yesterday we were taking the different functions, we were plugging numbers into them, and today we're going to do something similar, but we're not just going to plug numbers in, we're going to be plugging letters in. So today we're going to start off on example 5, and example 5 says find f of 3a, and we're still using the same functions from yesterday's notes. So if you look back at yesterday's notes, we have that function f was 3x minus 7. And we're going to do these problems exactly the same way that we did the problems yesterday, where the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to write down the function that we're working with. And then we're going to take our colors out and write down where the x's are. So f of x is 3x minus 7, so I'm going to go ahead and write that down. F of x is 3x minus 7. Okay, and so I'm going to take my color out. The places where the x's are here and here. And so now I'm going to rewrite the problem, just leaving blank spaces where the x's are, because I know that I'm plugging something in for the x. And then based on, yes? Do these examples first, and then you can go to the bathroom, because there's only a few examples. I don't want you to miss them. So what are we plugging in for the x? 3a. So I'm going to put a 3a right here, and I'm going to put a 3a right here. So the f of 3a, it's not actually really part of the problem, it's just the notation of like telling us what to do. So once I'm done with this part, I'm actually going to cover this with my fingers so I don't get confused. And then I'm only really going to mess with this part. Yesterday we were dealing with all numbers, and so once we were done, we could just take whatever this part was, we could plug it into the calculator, we'd be good. But today we're going to have letters, which means we can't plug this into the calculator. We can use the calculator to help us multiply things or add things, but we can't plug it straight into the calculator like we did yesterday. So here we have to actually think about like what's the appropriate procedure. So if you look at this, what should you do to simplify the problem? What would we typically do? We've got parentheses, and they're next to a 3. What does that usually mean, parentheses? It usually means multiply. So we've got 3 multiplied by 3a. What does that give us? 9a. 9a minus 7. Now yesterday we were plugging in a number, we were getting a number as an answer, and I told you guys that when that happens, we usually write the notation and we write the number answer because you're actually getting a point that you could graph. You're getting an x coordinate, you're getting a y coordinate, you could actually graph that. That's not what this is. This is just plugging in some expression, getting an expression as an answer. You do not have to include the fancy notation in the answer if you don't want to. And a lot of students, once they have the notation here, they don't like to keep going with the notation because they find it confusing. So if you want to ditch the notation after you set up the problem, that is fine. You can ditch the notation after the first step. So we did 3 times 3a minus 7. We got 9a minus 7. That's our final answer. We're done. Okay, let's try another one. So for this one, we're going to work with h of x. We're going to find h of negative 6. What letter should we use? D. All right. H of negative 6d. So what's my first step? I write down what h of x equals. So from yesterday, we had h of x was negative x to the third. So I'm going to write that down. Negative x to the third. All right. Next, I'm going to take my color and put it over my x's. And then I'm going to rewrite the problem, and I'm going to leave a space where each of the x's are to plug something in. And the thing that I'm plugging in is negative 6d. So I'm going to take my left finger, I'm going to cover up the notation so I don't get confused by it. So this problem is the negative version of negative 6d multiplied by itself 3 times. So this is the negative version of negative 6d times negative 6d times negative 6d. So what do you get if you do negative 6 multiplied by negative 6 multiplied by negative 6? Negative 200. You guys all have calculators. What's 6 times 6 times 6? 216. And then what is d times d times d? D cubed, yeah, d to the third. Okay? So we have the negative version of negative 216d to the third. What happens when you have a minus minus like that? Yeah, it makes it positive. So our final answer is 216d to the third. Okay, we're going to do one last one on the notes, and this one is going to be kind of a pain. And it's only because of the function we're going to use. So this function we're going to use is g. So we're going to find g of a plus 5. G of a plus 5. So we're going to look at our functions from yesterday. G of x is x squared minus x. So I'm going to start off by writing that down. G of x is x squared minus x. And I'm going to take g of x, going to write on the x's. Okay? Going to leave a space where each x is to plug something in. And then what am I plugging in? A plus 5. So I'm going to do a plus 5, a plus 5, a plus 5. For this part right here, g of a plus 5, I'm going to cover it up with my finger because it's just notation. It just told me what to do and I did it, so now I don't have to look at it anymore. When this says a plus 5 squared, what does that mean? It means I have the set of parentheses how many times? Twice. Okay, so let's write it twice. And when you have two sets of parentheses next to each other, how do you multiply them? Anyone remember? How do you multiply these together? Probably depends on who your Math 2 teacher was. They've taught you different ways. So some Math 2 teachers used a box to multiply them, and then some Math 2 teachers used FOIL. So which way would you guys rather do it? Do you want to do a box or do you want to do FOIL? FOIL? So if we do FOIL, we're going to do the first times the first. So what's A times A? A squared. Then we're going to do the outsides. So A times 5. 5A. Okay. Then we're going to do the insides. Another 5A. And then we're going to do the last. 25. And I like it because it makes a weird-looking moon. Anybody? No? Weird-looking moon? No? Okay, let's move on. All right, and then we have a minus sign in front of these parentheses. So what do we do here? Anybody know? It's kind of like having a minus 1 in front of the parentheses. We multiply it, so we distribute it. So what do we get? Multiply. Minus 5. Okay. So now, if we combine like terms, we only have the 1a squared, so I'll just write that down. We have 5a, 5a, and negative 1a. 5a, 5a, negative 1a. There's 3 of them, but how many are there? 5, 5, negative 1. 5, 5, negative 1. What does that add up to? 9. So plus 9a. And then we have 25 and negative 5. 20. There's our answer. So that one was more difficult specifically because g of x had more involved in it. It doesn't mean every problem's going to be like that. It just means that sometimes the problems are going to work like that. Okay, so let's go ahead and get our sheets from yesterday. And then, are you still having trouble putting the bathroom pass in? It just worked? Okay. Okay. No. Okay, so we've done 1 through 8. Let's go ahead and look at number 9. So number 9 says m of a plus n of b. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write down what m of x is. So if we look at the very top of the page, what is m of x? M of x is x to the third. M of x is x to the third. Okay, so I'm going to start like that. Then I'm going to leave a space to plug something in. And then what am I plugging in? I'm plugging in an A. Okay. I'm going to cover up my notation. And so here I have a in parentheses to the third, which literally just means a times a times a. And what's a times a times a? A to the third. So this is a problem where the parentheses didn't really make a difference for us. We put it in parentheses, but we technically didn't need them. So I'm just going to copy it down, a to the third. Okay, now the next part of the problem is n, where we plug in b. So n of x, if I look at the top of the paper, n of x is negative x squared. So I'm going to use my marker on my x's. Okay. And then I'm going to leave a spot to plug something in. And what are we plugging in? We're plugging in b. Okay. And I'm going to cover up my notation because I don't need it. So this means the negative version of b times b. The negative version of b times b. So I'm going to write that down. The negative version of b times b. What's the negative version of b times b? It's just negative b squared, yeah. That was another problem where we didn't really need the parentheses. They were kind of pointless. So if we have the first answer plus the second answer, we have a to the third plus negative b squared. Most people would not put plus and then a negative number. They would just write minus. Because if you're adding a negative number, it's just like subtracting. So most people for this would write a to the third minus b squared. That's the answer. Okay. I want you guys to try number 10. Try number 10. So it says f of 4a. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to write down what f of x is. So look at the top of your page, find f of x, and write it down. And then we're going to take our markers or our other colors and we're going to write over the x's. And then we're going to leave a blank space where the x's were so that we can plug in the 4a. And then once we plug in the 4a, we're going to see what we get. Everybody have an answer written down? Working on it? Okay, what did you guys have? Good, perfect. That's what we should have. Perfect. Okay, the next one is a little bit more difficult, so let's try number 11. So do the same thing. We're going to write down G. we're just going to copy down what the function is. And then we're going to use our other color where the x's are, and there's 2 spots, so be careful of that. There's 2 spots in the equation where the x's are that you're going to have to leave a space. And then we're going to take our x's out and replace the x with the negative 2b. Anybody have an answer? Did you guys get the same thing? Thank you. Liam, you can sit over there for today. Were you guys able to get this answer? Yeah? Okay. Let's do this last one together, and then I'll let you guys work on your own. All right, so we're going to write down the equation for h of x. We're going to use our colors on the x. And then replace the x with parentheses and leave a space there. And then in the parentheses, we're going to put an a plus 5. And then we just have to remember what to do to get rid of the parentheses. So what do we typically do when we have a minus outside of parentheses? What do we have to do with that? Distribute that minus. And then once you think you've got it, go ahead and look up and check your answer. Okay. Is it making sense? Yeah? Okay. So we are going to do, for the rest of the period and then for homework over the weekend, we're going to go through number 18. We're going to skip 19 and 20, but you're welcome to try them if you want. And then 21 through 24 are going to be extra credit. Okay, 21 through 24 are extra credit. You can write 25 if you want. That's just asking how you feel about it. Okay, so 19 and 20 we're going to skip. 21 through 24 are extra credit. 21 through 24 are extra credit. Okay, so we know that for the rest of the period, all we need to finish is 13 through 18, and if you finish 13 through 18 or get a good start on it, then you shouldn't have much homework this weekend. We good? Everybody knows what the expectation is? Yeah? Okay.